Hey friends, Ash here. Hope that you're doing well. I've got a doozy for you guys today. The new Dior Homme Parfum 2025. Technically, it came out right at the very end of 2024, but henceforth, it will be known as Dior Homme Parfum 2025. And like I said, this is a doozy. A lot of people are gonna be worked up about this. It's the first Dior Homme fragrance done by the new in-house perfumer of Christian Dior, Francis Kurkdjian, who you may recognize from fragrances such as Le Male or Baccarat Rouge 540 or Dior Sauvage Eau Forte. That one too. And this one is a new iteration, a new formulation, a new idea of Dior Homme Parfum, which is considered by a lot of people who are fans of the line to be the pinnacle of the Dior Homme fragrance line. The best of the best. So if you're changing that one up, you better come with your A game. So I bought this one from Christian Dior's website. It was $180 for this size right here, 75 milliliters. And you'll notice it is quite a lot smaller than the original Dior Homme Parfum in terms of the presentation, even though the amount of fragrance inside is the same. But we'll take a closer look at that here in a second. You can also get a 50 ml size. I think it was $160 for that one. I'll check. Probably should have checked that beforehand. Yes, $160. There's a lot to talk about here today. I'll show you guys the presentation up close so you can see the differences between the old and new iteration. I'll run down how the new one smells to me, whether it can hold a candle to the old one. I'll also go over how different they actually are. I'll let you know if you need to be stockpiling this one, if you really love the original iteration, and I'll just let you know my overall thoughts on the release. I'll try to have both of these linked in the description, assuming that I can find the original iteration. So feel free to check them out down there. If this is way in the future when you're watching this, then this original one might be really difficult to find. Let's go ahead and kick things off by taking a look at the presentation, and then we will work into the fragrance itself. So here we have the box. It's pretty simple overall. You have the name of the fragrance in house right there on the front, Dior Homme Parfum with the little Christian Dior B. You have nothing up top. You have nothing on the sides. On the back, just a tiny bit of information and the Dior website. And then on the bottom, you have your ingredients, your badge code, your barcode. My badge code is 4J01. And here we have the bottle. The first thing that jumped out to me when I pulled this out of the box was it's pretty small. That's not really something you want to hear, is it? I had it in my hand and I just thought, that's pretty small. Yeah, but it is. So it's noticeably smaller than the original Dior Homme Parfum's presentation. The glass overall is thinner along the edges and also the bottom. So even though it's 75 mils, just like the original Dior Homme Parfum, it does feel lighter in the hand and maybe not quite as expensive feeling. Although I will say that the cap looks nicer in my opinion. I actually really like the little metal plaque there where it says Dior Homme. You also have Parfum across the front. It is a bit of a fingerprint magnet and it has a really cool gradient as well, which I dig. It goes full black up toward the top, and then at the bottom there it's clear. You have the Christian Dior logo on top of the cap. On the bottom, etched into the glass, you have your typical information. When you remove the cap, you have the little Christian Dior B on the inside of the cap. Then you have the B on top of the atomizer as well. Let's go ahead and share a couple sprays. Here we go. Nice atomizer. And let's go ahead and do a couple sprays of the original also. So there we go. Now, before we dive into this fragrance, guys, I want to update you on the JOMASHOP codes. They are changing. So as of January 18th, the codes are going to be completely different. So you'll have to use the new codes after that date if you want to save money with those codes. Up until that day, the old codes work. And as usual, they only work within the JOMASHOP app. So just be aware of that upcoming change. And then all the other codes are the same as ever. So if you shop at any of those sites, you can use one of those codes to save yourself a little money. Okay. Let's start talking Dior Homme Parfum 2025. I guess the first thing to get out of the way, just right off the bat, right off the rip here, is the new Dior Homme Parfum markedly different than the original Dior Homme Parfum. Yeah, yes, yeah. Oh no. Very different. So what does this mean? Well, it means that this one, the original, is going away, and if you really love this one, you had better pick up yourself an extra bottle or two, because now that this is coming out to replace this, and it ain't nothing like the original, I can imagine a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, let me go ahead and pick up that bottle that I've been putting off when we're talking about the original, because the expectation here is that this is going to be phased completely out, and then it's going to be more difficult to find. It's already expensive, right? It's already kind of a pain to get a hold of, but I would just imagine it's going to be even more difficult, say, a year from now, 2 years from now. But yes, the new Dior Homme Parfum is different. Which one do I like more between the two? I guess we'll get to that in a second. But how does the new Dior Homme Parfum smell? Note breakdown wise, it's pretty simple. There's iris in here, amber woods, and patchouli. And I think the way it was officially put across was an amber accord with vetiver and patchouli, with iris off the top being kind of a woody amber iris scent overall. And it was pitched as being both powerful and sensual at the same time. So tender, but strong. How does it come across? Well, in the opening, actually, I really like it. When you first spray it on, you get that iris. It's a little bit sugary, you know, kind of a sweet iris, a little fresh. Again, totally different from the original Dior Homme Parfum, which is more of a powerful iris fragrance with this great leather note that really cuts through. This is much more of a bold fragrance, much more of a standout fragrance. Again, talking about the original Dior Homme Parfum here, you can tell that it's like pushing that boundary between a designer fragrance and a niche, like a true niche fragrance. It's kind of right there. So for a lot of people, they could smell the original Dior Homme Parfum and be like, ah, yeah, it's not wearable for me. But for people that really like it, top notch. You can tell right away when you spray on the new Dior Homme Parfum that they're moving away from that and they're bringing it more to like the designer iris, very easily worn type of scent profile. So for a lot of people, that's gonna be something where it's like an abomination.
How dare you?
Abomination. But yeah, when you first spray it on, kind of fresh, sugary sweet iris, does smell really pleasant. I'm a massive fan of iris and fragrances though, like any way, shape, or form, I like it. So the fact that I enjoy the opening, it ain't really saying much. Now, it does remind me a little bit of some other fragrances in the opening, the way that iris hits. It's almost like you took a little bit of the sweetness from something like Gentleman's Society. Not the Narcissus, but just the way it kind of has that sweetness off the top, and you mixed it with like Prada L'Homme-esque iris. You could also say maybe it's vaguely reminiscent of like Dior Homme Eau, which is discontinued. If you sweeten that one up a bit, that's kind of how it hits in the opening. So it could remind you of a number of different fragrances, because it does me. Like when I first smelled it, I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of like in the ballpark of like 5 or 6 other things out there, but still really pleasant. That being said, that initial opening with the iris, it is fleeting. It does not last. Yeah, unfortunately, when you first spray this on, and I'm talking about the opening here, the iris is there and it's gone. So whereas with the original Dior Homme Parfum, Dior Homme Original, Dior Homme Intense, the iris in those fragrances, it lasts, it lingers. This one, not so much. But again, that opening is pretty addictive. Go ahead and hit it now. Pretty good. Now what happens is, that goes away pretty quickly, and then as it starts to dry down, it reminds me a decent amount of this fragrance, Armani Code Parfum. Now again, I'm saying once we start to head into the dry down, the opening, these two aren't that similar. I think in the opening, like these two, you're not gonna confuse them at all. But as this dries, it does start to remind me a bit of Armani Code Parfum. And then the longer that this goes, the more that it dries down, you get more of that amber vibe that comes out, that kind of sweetness. And once you hit that far dry down where more of that amber comes out, which Dior says is a gourmand amber accord, it could begin to remind you a little bit of some of the really popular fragrances out there, like smatterings, like little smidgens of the Most Wanted Parfum kind of sprinkled in with Code Parfum. So yeah, it's one of these things where you look at it and you could view it one of 2 different ways. If Dior Homme Parfum, the original version, just wasn't for you, you would look at this and be like, oh, nice. So I feel like the way this fragrance is viewed is gonna fall largely into one of 2 camps. So on the one side, you're gonna have people who absolutely loved the original Dior Homme Parfum. They're gonna get this, which is kind of chasing trends a little bit while keeping the iris in there, just a little bit off the top, but still kind of trying to be looking at some of the other things out there and going, oh yeah, maybe a little this, a little that. Because some people have said that the new Dior Homme Parfum actually reminds them a little bit of Le Male de Parfum, for example. To me, again, it's a little more similar to Code Parfum, but you know, it's not like these two are completely wildly different, right? So it makes sense. They are different. I'm just saying they're kind of still in that same style overall. But anyway, you're gonna have those people who love this one and they're gonna see what this one is doing and they're gonna absolutely despise it. And then you're gonna have other people who maybe the original Dior Homme Parfum was not for them. It was too challenging, too niche, or maybe just the type of fragrance that they frankly wouldn't really wear, except for once a year or something. And they're gonna view this new one as being great because they're gonna go, oh, look at this. This is something new. It's taking bits of that, bits of that, bits of that, you know, different fragrances, putting a spin on it, and boom, here we go. Something wearable, something nice, something pleasant, a little clean, a little sweet. And they're gonna really enjoy this new one and say, ah, so much better than the old one because it's more wearable, more versatile, right? I can tell you my own personal taste. I really drastically prefer the original iteration. Like this is my jam, okay? Dior Homme Parfum is fan-freaking-tastic. And this over here, comparatively speaking, we'll just say I would take this one, yeah. And even if you really, really enjoy the new Dior Homme Parfum 2025, it does almost beg the question, why? And I think also one of the things that I'm thinking is, where does this slot in? Just in terms of fragrances at large, right? Because if you really like Iris, you probably already own Prada L'Homme, probably own Code Parfum, or you've tried them. You probably own fresher ones, or again have tried them, like Gentleman Eau de Toilette Intense, Le Male Le Parfum, or a number of other fragrances. And so you might say, well, you know, if this reminds me a little bit of that in the opening and a little bit of that in the dry down, is it worth paying essentially $200 for 75 mils for it when I can get some of this stuff over here and get largely the same thing? Well, obviously not the exact same fragrance, but you know what I mean. I grabbed all the bottles. I will say with this fragrance though, that Dior Homme Parfum 2025 comes across a little bit like Dior, I don't know if following is the right word, but they're chasing trends with this one, maybe that other brands have already set. So instead of Christian Dior coming out and going like, boom, you know, flopping it on the table and going like, look what we did, which is kind of what happened with Sauvage Elixir. They came out with Sauvage Elixir and they were like, there you go. And look how that went. Nice. Everybody was like, oh, okay. Even if you didn't really love Sauvage Elixir, you saw what it did, and you can't deny that. With this one, it definitely isn't hitting the same way. Now, with all that said, my wife is a hater of most Iris fragrances, unfortunately. And she actually really likes the dry down of the new one, which to be fair, it's not much of an Iris fragrance at that point, but she does really like it for what that's worth. In terms of performance, the new Dior Homme Parfum is not as good as the old one, but that's to be expected. The old Dior Homme Parfum is a bit of a monster. Like, it projects heavily, it lasts for an eternity. The new one, like I said, is fresher off the top, a little bit sugary initially, and then as it dries down, it doesn't have that big punch, you know, that heavy leather and everything else that Dior Homme Parfum original has. But for the type of fragrance that Dior Homme Parfum 2025 is, it lasts a good amount of time, it projects well. And in terms of seasons, I think it is more versatile than Dior Homme Parfum Original. I think that you can wear this one during fall, during winter, during early spring. I think it'd be a good daytime fragrance or evening fragrance. Definitely, versatility-wise, this is better. And definitely in terms of compliments, if that's what you're after with Dior Homme Parfum, if we're just talking about like grab and go fragrance wise, this one will be better. In terms of overall quality of fragrance and the fragrance itself, I think that this is better, and I think it's really not close. Now, all this being said, as time goes on and as, you know, everybody accepts that this is going away, and this one gets worn a bit more, it wouldn't surprise me if Dior Homme Parfum 2025 follows a similar kind of trajectory to Dior Homme 2020. Just in the sense of like, when this one first came out, everybody, including myself, hated it. Hated it. But then as the grieving for the change from Dior Homme Original to Dior Homme 2020 happened and time happened, people wore this more, revisited the fragrance, and they were like, oh, this is actually pretty good. It would not surprise me if the same thing happens here. And I would be lying if I said I didn't like how it smells. It does smell good, but it is 100,000%, like I said earlier, more in line with the contemporary Iris fragrance, the more wearable, kind of sweet take on Iris, not like overly creamy, lipsticky, heavy. You know, it's not that. As I said, it's following a trend that has been set. It does it well, that trend, you know, it's pulling that off, but a lot of fans of this don't want that. So there we go, the new Dior Homme Parfum 2025. As time goes on, of course, I'm gonna wear this more and see how it grows on me. And I am gonna be picking up some more of this, along with a lot of other people, so there's that. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Stay safe out there. I will see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys.